Hey guys, it's Sam and I'm here with a Crayola marker tutorial on how to draw / color fire. And just to start off with, I'm not using normal computer paper, or rather not using computer paper or printer paper at all. You cannot use that if you want to follow along with this tutorial. The paper is too thin, and since we're going to be using water, it will not work. You also need Q-tips and of course Crayola markers. Oh, and a little scrap paper, which can also not be that. I just used a sketchbook that I got from my local grocery store. It was like $3. The paper is just thicker, so as long as the paper feels decently thick, you should be okay. And for this tutorial, I'm using a 10-pack of Crayola markers. I'll be using brown, purple, blue, and of course, red, orange, and yellow. Alright, so just to get started, I wanted to go ahead and just do a plain one with just the markers and no extra special stuff. And for fire, you really want it to be random and not uniform, since fire is more kind of not controlled, the best way to put it. The shape is not super important, so if it looks wonky, that's okay because it's fire. You can start off with sketching with a pencil to try and get that shape. Don't worry about like your hand shaking. Your hand shaking is probably actually going to make it look better, because that's kind of how I draw this fire. I just let my hand kind of wiggle all over the place. Looking at references is also a super great thing. I went on Google Images and I just looked at fires and campfires and tried to emulate the things that I saw. Now with these 3 colors, it is really limited, so that's why I wanted to do this special technique that you're seeing right now, which is using Q-tips and water. What you want to do is you want to take a little bit of water and put it on the Q-tip, or just rather dip the Q-tip in a little bit of water. Have your scrap paper and scribble with the marker on the scrap paper, and then dip the Q-tip into the color. You don't want to rip up the paper too much, so if your paper's too thin and it's getting pieces ripped up, that's not good. You need thicker paper. I actually found out that this paper that I'm using isn't even thick enough for that. It was starting to tear when I was using the yellow because the yellow wasn't coming off strong enough. But anyway, so you rub it into the color and then you rub it onto the other paper. I started off with the red and it was very pink, so I went over it again with the orange, and that kind of, you know, helps with the colors. They blended together and it made it thicker and darker, and that was actually very nice. And it came off as like really nice soft fire. So if you need perhaps fire in the background that you don't want to be super strong and you don't want to kind of take over your page and be the focus, then this is probably a technique that I would recommend, because Crayola markers are water-based, so they will blend very easily with water. For the third one, I was going to experiment, and this is like all experimenting. I am not a super great Crayola marker artist, but I really am having a lot of fun, so this is probably something I want to recommend if you want to play around. But anyway, so this third one was me experimenting with combining both the first technique and the second one, where I would have the blended background and then go over it again with these solid colored markers. And I wanted to work kind of fast to try and help blend them together, and that helped a lot. I think the yellow one was the most effective in blending because the color was so light. Though I probably would recommend, if you do this, get 2 yellow markers, just so you don't have to like waste extra paper, as you can see on the side that I have to do to keep rubbing off the colors. So if you have 1 yellow for blending with the oranges and reds, and another yellow to just stay pure yellow. But that really helped add like an extra shade or 2 in between the yellow and the orange, which made the blending look way better than I expected with Crayola markers. Like, this experiment that I did was I was really impressed with how well they came out. This one's a fire tornado, which is a thing. It actually exists. Google it, please, because pictures are amazing. And if you haven't seen it already, the slow-mo guys did a video on it, if it's still up. And definitely go search for that on YouTube and watch that, because it's also a great reference to see it. For fire tornadoes, you really want to make sure you get that twist. I think it helps to have the darker colors pass through and just work your way lighter towards the center. And you don't want a lot of details as it gets hotter. The cooler the fire is, the darker and more red the colors are. And the hotter it is, the closer to white it is. So you don't want to have too many details in the white section. For the Crayola markers, I kind of just let the yellow sort of drag down, and I didn't just let the white of the paper show through for areas where I wanted it to try and stay as pure white as possible. Now for like those flakes that are flying off, that was just random pressing with my hand. Again, I'm not like doing these all so meticulous. My hand is kind of going all over the place. It's shaky. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's fire. It's going to look strange shapes and stuff. Unfortunately, this technique didn't work out as well as I wanted it to do with this fire tornado. I wanted to go over it again with the Q-tips, but I accidentally smudged too much when I was using the water, and I tried to compensate for that for going over it again with the marker and to try and make it look like it was intentional, but it wasn't intentional. It didn't cover it up very well. It started off okay, but then I sort of screwed up, and I was like, well, alright, no worries. I also want to quick mention that if you want to see other references from drawn fire references, if you haven't seen the show Avatar: The Last Airbender or Avatar: Legend of Korra, it's the same series, I highly recommend it, first of all, and second of all, they have a lot of fire in that show. There's these people called firebenders who can bend fire, and if you want to see just drawings of fire and kind of get some more ideas of how you could draw fire in your own drawings, I would definitely check that out. I still recommend and highly recommend and push that you look at realistic references or references like in real life, like a candle, or maybe in your backyard you have your own campfire, and I think that would be the most helpful. Yeah, so both of those I feel are valid references for you to use, and I recommend both of them. And I really also recommend that you just experiment and you try things out, and if you make a mistake, it's not a big deal because you're learning, and that's the important part. Plus, it's Crayola markers. They're going to be a little bit of tricky to use at first, but I don't know, it was a lot of fun still to try these out. This is me doing a campfire now. I had no idea what I was doing. I've never done this before with Crayola markers. This is 100% on the spot. I had a reference open of a campfire, and I started out drawing the wooden logs with the orange, and I went over it with, I think it was the blue or the purple. I layered all three of the other colors. I layered both the brown, the purple, and the blue. And just to kind of give it a little bit of woody texture, I ended up going over it again with perpendicular lines. I didn't want to cover the entire log because I didn't want the perpendicular scratchy lines to go all the way across because it's lit up by the fire. But I think that really helped add to the wooden texture. And then what really made a difference was when I went over it again with the wet Q-tip. That really blended the colors phenomenally. So that Q-tip makes a difference. And so if you guys are using Crayola markers, use water. It makes a huge difference. You get so many more colors and you can blend so much better when you have it. With the rocks, I started off with the brown, and I was really upset because it was so dark and I really wanted to have those highlights of the orange. And yeah, so that was kind of a silly, stupid mistake on my end. I went over it again, I think, with the blue and possibly the purple, and then I had the idea to use the Q-tips, and that actually picked up the brown, which lit it up and actually made it look like there were highlights. So that was really cool, and I kind of freaked out when I accidentally stumbled upon that trick. So yeah, you guys gotta play around and just try random things that you're not sure are gonna work, but then they might end up doing something that you never even thought of. That's the fun part about, experimenting and learning. And for the embers in the fire at the bottom, I just used the orange. I didn't want to go too dark and use the red. I felt like that would have been too strong. I think the orange was soft enough but still dark enough to contrast against the yellow for it to be noticeable. And again, for the little flaky spark things, I was just random hand dotting. That's it. There's no other trick than that. I was really surprised at how well this actually went. The only other time I've drawn with Crayola markers aside from when I was a child was recently when I did a cheap art supplies tool challenge, which I can link in the description if you guys want to check that out. That was also just Crayola markers, same sketchbook, and a ballpoint pen, and that was it. So after I did that challenge, I really wanted to do Crayola stuff more often, which is why I did this tutorial, because I think Crayola markers are taken for granted for all the stuff that they can do. And God, that yellow just makes all the difference, I swear. Watching this again right now, and they blend, man. They can blend. And so I really wanted to have more stuff with Crayola markers to be like, hey guys, this like $3 box of 10 markers, and I think they have more colors than just 10. It took me a little bit to find, but they do have like a 50 set that was $18 and it was $14 on Amazon. 50 markers for $14 plus shipping. I swear this isn't sponsored, guys. I want to show people and even prove to myself that you can do stuff with Crayola markers, because I've heard people like, oh, Crayola pencils, yeah, those are actually not that bad, they're really good, which is true. But then when you tell them about Crayola markers, they're like, oh, well, you know. So you guys can do stuff with Crayola markers, and it can look cool, and it can look good. So that's the point of this tutorial, aside from the fact that just, you know, fire and stuff, and fire is cool. But anyway, so play around with different shapes, definitely look up references, try to draw every reference you see, and just experiment and try different things. Use the water and the Q-tips, and there you go, that's my advice. Don't forget to check out my other tutorial, which is the same tutorial as this one, but with Copic markers. So if you guys want to use the more expensive, fancy art tools, I also did the same fire tutorial with Copic markers. Link in the description. Please be sure to check that out. I have other advice in there that I didn't necessarily share in here, and vice versa. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope that helped, and bye!